again, when he showed up that night, what was he all really flustered and then he just completely tanked as well at the Comedy Store?
Yeah, I mean that was regular for him to tank. He always tanked, but he was more like Kramer that night than I'd ever seen him acting. He was real anxious. A lot of trouble. Like it was almost free because I had gotten, I loved the show. I watched every episode in the 90s, but you get used to these guys coming around the Comedy Store and you immediately start to get used to them as their person, as themselves. But he was very animated that night, very, whoa, big trouble. Like when Kramer fucked up, it was kind of like that.
That is the voice of comedian Freddy Lockhart, who has the notoriety of being the very last person to ever bring Michael Richards from Seinfeld on stage as a comedian the night he had a meltdown. And yes, you've tuned into another episode of Comedy History 101, where we school you in comedy. I am Harmon Leon. Hello, how is everyone? And as I mentioned, Freddy was the very last person to bring Michael Richards on stage the night he had his infamous meltdown. That date was November 19th, 2006. And here's something you don't know. The night Michael Richards had his meltdown on stage at the Laugh Factory became one of the very first viral videos and just ended the career of Michael Richards. He went on. He didn't go home. He went on to the Comedy Store and went and did another set. Somehow, in his Michael Richards from Seinfeld mind, he thought, well, maybe I could win it back by having a really good set at the Comedy Store to wipe away that taste in my mouth of spewing racism on stage at the Laugh Factory. Freddy's going to talk about not only that, but Freddy was also there the night Joe Rogan confronted Carlos Mencia on stage at the Comedy Store, which was another viral video, and he'll share tales of that as well. But before we jump into the episode, take time to like, subscribe, and comment on Comedy History 101, wherever you get your podcasts. Also, a few plugs. On Thursday, August 17th, 7 p.m. at Young Ethel's in Brooklyn, I'll be producing my show, That 80s Improv Challenge. So come and check that out. Also on Wednesday, August 30th, I will be co-producing our show, Comedy Bites, AI versus Human Comedy Roast Battle at Crystal Lake in Brooklyn. Which, by the way, Freddy was also part of our show in Los Angeles at the Ice House when we performed Comedy Bites. He was the human part of the AI versus human roast battle, and we will kick off our conversation talking about his experience being in a roast battle with an AI. And now, without further ado...
You're stupid. Everybody's so stupid.
I'm trying to use the phone! Excuse me!
Comedy History 101. Did you have fun in the AI versus human roast battle? What's your takeaway?
It was very interesting. I did have fun. I always like a challenge like that. It was pretty impressive that there was one burn that really got me. I was like, wow, I don't think come back from that. So I was pretty impressed. It's kind of like the whole thing with AI. Everybody's a little scared. It's scary kind of right now, but think how good it will get. And so that's what I saw. But I do think that there's room for it, and I didn't feel threatened by it.
Yeah, do you remember the specific burn?
That avalanche of them that just kept coming. There was like 5 or 6. I was like, okay, all right, that's good. Okay. And so I think that just showing its ability to be intelligent, showing the intelligence part, it wasn't like Siri burnt me. It was a real burn.
The nuts and bolts under the hood is I just took the information that you've had forwarded onto me and I fed it in many variations into ChatGPT, and that's what it generated. So I think, people fear AI and, it's a part of the strike, but it's a great creative tool, much like the camera was in the 1800s, as people feared painting would be replaced.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say there's probably some guy with a sketch pad bed like this. Screw these cameras, they're no good, fella.
Yeah, never catch on.
No, I always look at it something here to augment. People are always thinking it's here to take, but no, it's here to free up your mind so I don't have to maybe write a script 17 times. Maybe you only have to write it 3 times.
Yeah, or just have a brainstorming buddy by your side. Like, if
absolutely.
you can't be in a writer's room, you can like, okay, let me bounce some ideas off this tool.
Right, absolutely. It's just when it starts to make you like, damn, why didn't I think of that? Oh, because I'm not AI.
But I could go to the argument is you prompted it. So therefore you do have a hand
You
in
are
it.
the author of it. Everything's derivative, and it's AI. All AI is us that learns on a way quicker scale, but we learn something from everybody else. Like that's what
Yeah.
people I think don't get about it is like all it's doing is learning. Yeah, it's grabbing from the internet. So are you. So am I. So I didn't invent the Beatles. I listened to them, and then somebody inspired them. So it's just the thing that I think it could be here to help, or it could be here to, if you're lazy, do the work. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I equate it to like, say, in the days of, it's like it's a cheating. You're cheating your joke writing. Well, so is a thesaurus in a book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Therefore, all right, you just looked up a dozen words that mean what you're looking for. So,
Yeah.
is that cheating or is that accessing a tool?
Right. Like there was something I was even reading today. I was reading a copy for Microsoft for a voiceover, and it was about AI. And AI, I guess I shouldn't say too much, but basically it's an AI browser, a web browser. And they're like, we'll go down the rabbit hole for you. And that's pretty much, what they can do is, what you're looking for. They'll just find it that instantly instead of you having to fall down a rabbit hole reading articles from 1950 on for the thing you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, one way to look at it is it's just the new Google. It's a new way to Google and access information quicker. And then instead of like, okay, I'll have to read through 10 articles on X topic, here, this kind of scrape together all those 10 articles into one sort of, thread.
And you can keep it honest too. I'm sure every time it creates something, it can immediately put some kind of stamp on it and say this, in case a college kid's trying to pass it off as a paper or somebody has their own speech, this was created by AI. I'm sure there's a way the developers can do that.
Yeah, my buddy worked at Adobe, and basically Photoshop had built into it on the back end to tell that this was Photoshop. So, they built that kind of safeguard in.
Oh, good.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Good,
yeah.
good. Well, the thing is, it's good though because if there's somebody who comes along and says this is my original thing, we could be like, actually, we have the DNA of this. This was not you.
Yeah.
You can tell, like, or you could say 30% of it was AI and 70% was you. Therefore, it was you. But if you said you didn't contribute any of this, then that footprint, I think, helps keep the art world honest.
Again, there's always going to be cheaters. There's always going to be people looking for, the easy route. But again, it's just like, at least in our show, we try to trumpet that, this is AI and a human.
Right. And it's what's great about this, the comedy aspect of it too, is I really do, is as much as people are worried for their jobs, it's comedy is something, it's very human. You can find the science to it. How often does the crowd laugh? You can find all those things, the technical things.
Break down the analytics, yeah.
Yeah, but I've always been a believer is you're born as funny as you're ever going to be. You just learn to get comfortable in front of strangers. That's it. So, I've heard comics be like, I'm trying to get funnier. I was like, well, you're in the wrong place because we came funny. You're learning how to be yourself up there. It's like a doctor saying, I'm trying not to be queasy around blood anymore. Well, I don't know if this is for you, bro. Like that's kind of a prerequisite is being funny or not being queasy around blood. So I don't feel like the AI thing it's not funny. It's smart, it's clever, but it's not quite yet funny. And funny, I mean born funny. It can mimic funny, and it can do a good job even being better than a lot of comedians, But the comics that rise to the top, the legends, I don't see them coming for their jobs.
You're stupid. Everybody's so stupid.
So here's a pivot.
Okay.
Speaking of legends, so welcome to Comedy History 101. You would have learned, and when I was feeding the AI prompts, have a very particular connection to a very infamous place in comedy history. Could you just give us the 1 to 2 line paraphrase of what that event would be?
Sure. I was going on in the main room at the Comedy Store one night, and Michael Richards, Kramer from Seinfeld, was set to go on after me. And he was running a little late, but he finally gets in and he's like, "Oh, you're never going to believe it. I had some trouble." It's like, "What kind of trouble?" He's like, "Trouble at the Laugh Factory." I was like, the Laugh Factory. Okay, whatever. What happened? Did you get heckled? And he's like, yeah, it was real bad, real bad. I was like, hey, it's baseball. I give him the old speech. It's baseball. If we're hitting 30%, we're going to the Hall of Fame. You don't got to worry about it. He's like, no, it's real bad, real bad, real bad. I'm like, how bad can it be? And then he's just not telling me. And then they start calling my name. I was like, dude. And the last thing I said to him is, I go, if nobody got it on video, there's nothing to worry about. And I go get on stage and I do my set. And then I bring him on. After I'm done, he bombs because he was a terrible comedian. But that was the last time he would ever do stand-up comedy again, because it hit the press. Somebody did record it, and it was him dropping the N-bomb like a space bar. And he spared telling me because I'm half black. So, it all made sense in the morning. I went, oh, that's why he didn't tell me. Yeah. And thank God somebody got that on video. Yeah.
And before that, what was your opinion of Michael Richards? I mean, again, there's a specific thing mostly like in LA, where someone's famous and they want to parlay that fame, and they think it's sort of an easy pivot to, well, I'll just do a stand-up comedy act. Like Stormy Daniels went that directions.
Right. The great thing about comedy, it's a very humbling thing, and if you don't got it, you don't got it. And he is a great comedic timing pratfall artist. He has his place in history for sure. And when he would come around doing stand-up, guys like him and Judd Apatow, they're actually very nice. And Judd Apatow was a comedian before, and Michael Richards was back in the day, but they're not like us in the gym every single day. And he was bad. And the thing is, he was fairly nice every time I spoke with him, but he wasn't good at it, because you just can't fake comedy. You just can't fake it. And even if you're a star, that might even put you in arrears with the audience, because they expect you to be great. But how many doors can you burst through on stage,
Yeah, I mean, like what I've seen is like someone's like from a sitcom, and it's like maybe a wholesome sitcom, and then they get the 1 minute to 2 minutes of, oh, look, it's them. And then they pivot into like, oh, did you know, like a dirty version of their clean sitcom or something like that.
Yeah.
And, that maybe takes 3 minutes. And then what do they do the rest of the 7 minutes? So what kind of stuff material was Michael Richards doing at that time?
Trying some weird kind of like alt comedy. Like alt comedy was real big in the early 2000s. And some people were great at it. Galifianakis was an alt comic. There was brilliant ones. And that's what it is. He was just like acting out monologues and just being strange and things where I'm like, dude, this is hard enough when you're good, man. Why are you doing this? Why are you going up there? Like he wouldn't talk about Seinfeld. People wanted to hear the Kramer thing. You're the most famous next door neighbor in television history. You're not going to shake that. You either embrace it, find a way to do stand up. I don't think he can, just because he's not a real one like Jerry was, like Seinfeld. By real one, I mean practice and seasoned. And before you got famous, you were already an accomplished comedian. Whereas he was on a show called Fridays. He'd worked a lot, even in his 20s. Just didn't have it. And I've seen some actors kind of pivot to comedy and do okay. I'm not going to say Jeremy Piven's good, but he's not bad. He's
doing stand-up now?
Yeah, he's been doing it for years now. And he at least humbles himself to do it, to do the late night spots, to take the licks, that kind of thing. I'm not going to say he's great, but he's not one of these actors who's making a hobby of it.
Do you think like Michael Richards, did he have like that attitude of, I'm a star, therefore you should enjoy what I'm doing, or not wanting to put in the homework when he would come on stage? And secondly, were people generally excited when they saw him like come up on stage?
Yes. Yeah. So absolutely. So, to see him, it was still, he started coming around. I don't know. I guess like for a couple of years. And yeah, absolutely. That's a huge TV star. People would freak out. And he was always nice. You could tell he was strange, but he was always nice. I think the thing is he is one of these kind of performance arts guys who happen to be a silly guy in a sitcom, but now he's like, take me seriously. Now I'm doing this, when in fact that's not what they want. And so it was kind of almost like East Village in the late 60s kind of thing. Like they're not going for this dude. They want Kramer, they want the Falls and that kind of stuff. And again, it just doesn't translate on stage very much if you're just falling down all the time. And I think, and he also had a sitcom that they tried to parlay off of Seinfeld that just didn't work out. And he like I was saying, he's the most famous next door neighbor in TV history. Rest on that, don't. To me, why sully that? Why go out there and look bad at something when you were great at something?
Yeah, did he have that reputation like in around the stand-up scene in LA of just losing his cool on stage? Was that like the first time that he snapped? And it obviously lives in infamy.
Yeah, I don't know anybody to know that he was any sort of hothead ever. I had never heard that. If anything, he was so shockingly meek and reserved compared to the Kramer thing. He's not doing that spinning around. He's usually enters a room very gently, like hello, hi, hello. He's very. I'm not going to defend him, but that night was, to me, it was just. The thing is, he was so bad at comedy that he hadn't taken those licks of a heckler before, so he tried to answer back with the worst, most disgusting, vile thing he could think of or say, and he did. And that's amateur comedy 101. You fold it. You couldn't be funny in the moment, so you went for hateful. And whether you mean those things or not, the fact that you said them and that you said them on tape, I don't feel sorry for you. But if anything, I just saw a really bad comic go to a really bad place because he just didn't have the skills to deal with people shitting on him.
Again, when he showed up that night, what was he all really flustered and then he just completely tanked as well at the Comedy Store?
Yeah, I mean that was regular for him to tank. He always tanked, but he was more like Kramer that night than I'd ever seen him acting. He was real anxious. A lot of trouble. Like it was almost free because I had gotten, I loved the show. I watched every episode in the 90s, but you get used to these guys coming around the Comedy Store and you immediately start to get used to them as their person, as themselves. But he was very animated that night, very, whoa, big trouble. Like when Kramer fucked up, it was kind of like that. And that was the case. And then he did that Letterman show with Jerry Seinfeld, and that was awkward.
That was awkward.
Yeah, they're lucky. It was like this. I think it was. I want to say it was like 2010-ish. I could be wrong.
I'm here in my notes. It was 2006. I think November 20th.
Jeez, that's how quickly time gets by. Oh, okay. A lot of these times the years get mixed up, so that makes sense. But makes perfect sense. I was 27 years old. I was on a TV show at the time. I was getting great spots, and then he. I wouldn't even say I befriend him. It's just when you start to go up and you're bringing him up or they're bringing you up. You spend time in the green room. And I could just say he was a very quiet, nice person. And then when he did that, it was like, oh, dude.
His comeback, like say on that thing when he was on the Letterman show with Seinfeld was, obviously the first go-to after being racist is saying, I'm not racist.
Right.
But when you get heckled by a heckler, there's so many other choices to go to.
Right.
To insult the audience. And he went for that.
Yeah, which is telling.
Moment. So I don't think that holds up.
It makes me think, though, that again, he went for the ugliest thing he could possibly think of. And to me, that shows that he thinks of it. So it was, but he panicked. He hit the panic button and then he just started saying that. But when you were going on and he wasn't drunk, I never saw him drink, like to me, when comedy puts you in that corner, he showed his real self. And a lot of times I've been put in that corner, but you become funny. You start saying funnier things because how dare this person try to say I'm not funny? I'd rather say somebody called me the N-word than say I'm not funny on stage. And that's what somebody told him. You're not funny. And boy, did that just sit unright with him. And Jim Crow came out and took over the rest of his set. And, what's lucky for him, that makes sense that it was 2006. Because I was going to say, in this even modern era, he would be way more lambasted than he was. He got off lucky.
I'm trying to use the phone.
I think it was again, just look at 2006. It was like the shows that were big at the time was like Mind the Mencia, and where you could, or at least he in his show kind of tote that line of like, because if you look at that tape, it's just like just did again, and it's like, oh boy, that just still hits you like a punch. Is like he gets an initial first laugh, and that seemed to give him encouragement to go that way? Do you think he was trying to be like a Carlos Mencia? Like, look, I'm Carlin, like I'm George Carlin, who I'm going to bring this back around to make some sort of point somehow. And we're all going to have a big laugh in the end.
I think arrogantly, he probably thought that this is, hey, it's the 70s, man. We're all doing a little blow. You know, I can go to this place. You'll go there with me. No, not for a second. And again, I just think that what he did, even if it was a bit, and I've known white comics to do bits that would get them canceled today, you know, but it was a different time. And so I think, yeah, he probably did think he was going to some artistic thing. I'm going to do this, you know, freestyle, outrageous character, this indignant Southern, I'm mad as hell Southern character. But, you know, it just, again, it makes me wonder what told you it was safe to go there? Like, who did you think you were going to bring along with that? You know, the N-word wasn't popular then either with the hard R. So that's why I can't. I remember comics using it back then, but with context, you know, making fun of a redneck, something like that. But, you know, to watch somebody self-implode like that, it's funny because I'm a comedian. It's like, oh, man, whew. But at the same time, it's like it shed so much light as to why he was being so weird around me. And, you know, he was either ashamed for me to find out, embarrassed for me to find out that he said something like that, or for me to find out how he really is. I don't know. All I can say is he was always, you know, fairly mild-mannered, nice guy who just didn't do very well on stage.
And how long did it take you to get the news of the Laugh Factory? Was it immediately the next morning? And what was your initial reaction?
That was crazy. That was the next morning, I remember, because this is when I started to realize how quick things can turn around. And this was, the next morning. And morning in comic terms. Back then I was 27, so I probably woke up at like fucking noon. But I woke up and it was a trending story on TMZ. You know, one of those things broke it, and it was like, oh fuck. And I was like, I was there, man. I was there. And then when I saw what he did, I was just like, what the fuck? But it all made sense. Sorry, I'm trying to look up that exact day. Kramer do now. Yeah, it was 2006. God, I can't believe that was 2006. I still think I'm 20 something years old. That's the problem. I've been out here since 2000. Yeah, I've been doing this since 2000. The year 2000. I came out when I was 20, so I still think of things as, that was just 3 years ago, right? No, old man.
I mean, I think that was like the first viral video. Did everyone else just go, it's over for him? That's game done.
Yeah. And here's the difference between today and yesterday. You wouldn't have a spot on Letterman after something like that. This shit would have hit the fan. Everybody would have been shut down. No Seinfeld reruns, no nothing. They would have been like, off you go, take him out of the show. I think it was crazy to see the viralness of it, but it was also like, I think one saving grace for him. Kramer is a household name. Cosmo Kramer is. Michael Richards isn't. You know, so that kind of helps too. When you go Michael Richards, you're going to go from Seinfeld. So I think that could be a saving grace for him to step out and just never be like, if you don't watch Seinfeld. And enough time has gone by that Seinfeld's on all the time. They're not hiding him. Yeah, that it was surreal to be in the ground. And I've been on the ground floor of a few viral moments that went viral. I was there the night that Joe Rogan told Carlos Mencia off. I was working the cover booth at the Comedy Store.
Oh wow, yeah. Just for tell people that incident. Ari Shaffir was there, right?
Yeah, Ari was there. Kirk Fox was there. They're all friends of mine still. Carlos gets off, and Carlos is bringing, I think, Kirk Fox on, and then Joe Rogan yells like, Carlos Mencia, or Ari did, and Carlos was like, what? And so Rogan got up there and they started going at it, like you see the video. And I'm working the cover booth, so I've got a great seat. I'm calling comics who aren't there. I'm like, get out of here. It's happening. And they knew what I meant, because we hated Carlos. He was such a bully. He would just come up there and I'm doing 3 hours of your material.
He's just the worst of the worst on, not just a comic level, just a human level.
Yeah, a terrible human. And he's not a steward of the art form. He doesn't care about it. He cared about himself. And Rogan was kind of like the sheriff around there. Like, he didn't, he was like, what has he been doing? And so Rogan gets up there, and at the time, neither one were huge names. They were known, if you know comedy, but Rogan was on Fear Factor. Carlos was a big touring comic and just got the show. and they were going back and forth, and so that it went on for more than half an hour. And my buddy Red Band recorded the whole thing, and he was standing right next to me, and we were giggling. And
He's the one who recorded the viral video?
yeah, Brian Red Band recorded it, Joe's producer. And this was back then. Joe was always carrying a camera around, and we were always hanging out smoking weed. But this was the night, and I kept saying it's happening because this was building up for years. He was doing this to us for years, and we knew he was a joke thief, and we knew he was bad. And it was kind of like, I always say, the Al Capone thing. They got him on tax evasion. The joke they called him out on, the build the wall joke, 97,000 comedians wrote that joke on the same day.
Bill Maher did that exact joke too on his show.
Like, that was
It was low hanging fruit.
Low hanging fruit, and you know, you got to do diligence. You got to grab it, but you know, he did. But and Joe called him on that. But luckily, they got into the real beef of it. You know, you bump comics, you steal material, and then that wrecked Carlos's career. The next day, again, it hit the trades. The video got out. Carlos was suing the Comedy Store, banned Joe Rogan for 7 years, and you know, it was a whole fiasco.
Wait, Rogan was banned for 7 years?
For 7 years from the
Whoa.
Comedy Store, because they said he verbally assaulted another comic on stage, but it was just a thing. Carlos, you know, complained to his agent. I was with the same agent as Carlos at the time, the Gersh agency, and I even had to call my agent and be like, I had nothing to do with it. I mean, even some of the camera shots, because they're going around being like, Carlos is a thief, right? But I was young enough to know. My name's Paul. That's between y'all. I got no fucking comment, because that guy can still squash me. I'm just a cover booth kid at the time. Yeah, man, it was awesome. And that happened before Kramer, because I was working the cover booth. So this must have been a year something before, 5. But he destroyed Carlos in one night. And Joe took years to get to where he was after that. But now you see the disparity between the two. It's hilarious. You know, Joe's arguably one of the most famous people on earth, and Carlos a footnote who can maybe sell out the Ontario Improv.
Yeah, I just always wondered where he went, because you just really never really hear about him anymore.
I know from the inside, from Steve Trevino, a comedian who used to open for him, and a few guys, that he never drank until all that. He drank, he owes people a bunch of money, went to a dark place, as you could imagine he would. You know, that was an embarrassing moment, but it was deserving. He was a joke thief, a blatant, the worst, like a horse thief in the Old West, just the worst of the fucking worst, you know?
Yeah. Joe was just saying the quiet part out loud.
Yeah, and he could, because he could kick everyone's ass.
I mean, you have those 2 Marin episodes about it, where it's like night and day, and it's just kind of like just inside the mind of a sociopath.
He is. He's a sociopath, narcissistic tendencies, all that. And the sad thing was, he was a strong performer. He just he flew too close to the sun, man. He got too arrogant and thought nobody mattered and he could take anybody's material. And again, the wall joke, everybody wrote that joke, but the Bill Cosby joke, I mean, my God, that you're like a cover comic at that point. You're basically taking a song and singing it.
Yeah. I mean, there's these people so driven, and driven's not really the right word. They go, well, this will just get me up the ladder. It doesn't matter. I just need to kill every show. I'll do that by any means necessary. And their any means necessary is just stealing material.
Yeah, it's like if a tech bro did comedy. That's what it's like, you know, just squash them all, man.
Excuse me!
If the Kramer incident wasn't filmed, like something I heard, do you think he would have just been back doing sets around town? Because I heard he turned up the next night at the Laugh Factory. Like he was booked on and no one, like, even there, and this is what gets me, is like no one in the room at the Laugh Factory that night said, you know, maybe you shouldn't come back, because he came back the next night, I heard.
Yeah, apparently he did. It's kind of like the Seinfeld episode where George got fired, but he came back on Monday to pretend like it didn't happen. Like that's what he took a play from George Costanza on that one. I think it was a different time back then. And had it not been on camera, it would have just been a story. And even if the people in the audience would have gone public with it, I don't know that people would have picked up on it. And people might have even still been like, it's a nightclub, it's a performance, he's Kramer, you know, that kind of thing. Whereas it might even sound like I wasn't defending him saying he's not a racist. I don't know what's in his head. I really don't. I never got that vibe from him. But when you throw that kind of tirade, I get you're trying to do a character, but I would never talk like that. And I'm half black and I have the past to. And it's just weird to me. If anything, why do you need to go there? And why was that your instinct to go there? When, by the way, the hecklers were black people, and black people are great audience members. If you suck, they'll let you know, but if you're good, they'll let you know. I like that fairness in them. If you suck, turn it up or get off the stage. But I don't think you're gonna win hearts and minds with inward with a hard R multiple times and pitchforks.
Yeah, and have you seen other comedians not as famous as Kramer just totally implode their careers in one night?
I've seen equally as famous ones do it and nobody caught it on camera. Yeah.
Could we go down that avenue without, if you feel comfortable with not necessarily naming names, but maybe hinting?
Equally as famous, a sitcom star and comedian, with a bit of a reputation. And I saw him implode on stage so hard one night. He berated the audience, told them they were all idiots, that they didn't understand him. And there was like a mass. They wanted their money back. They were throwing things. They were asking me to go back out there and win them back over. I was like, fuck, I ain't getting the shit. I already did my job. It was bad. And he's got a reputation. And I don't name names, that's not what I'm going to do. But
I mean, Larry David used to do that in his stand back in his early days, but it's right. Larry David doing it.
It's Larry David. He would
all
be
the
funny.
comedians in the back of the room, he would just be dying.
Yeah, and he would be funny because he's funny. Larry David is born funny. He knows himself. But this comedian, it was a lot like Kramer trying some art house shit that just wasn't going to go for this crowd. They don't want to hear your monologue with no punchlines of irony. Not going to work. This is comedy. It's boxing, man. You're disrespecting the audience. I get it if this was some hipster room and we were doing a hipster club in downtown LA on a rooftop and you wanted to do that, makes perfect sense. But they all paid money to see somebody they know from television, from a major show. And you do have an obligation to, if you don't have your own audience, to at least, I don't want to say give them what they want, but don't try the weird shit. You're not Stephen Wright. You're not that good at it, Like the ones who shine, the Mitch Hedbergs, all these people, that they were brilliant. That's why. And if you're not brilliant at that, you're going to look foolish.
On Dana Gould's podcast, it just, you're there to entertain. You are holding a amplification stick in your hand and a spotlight is on you. Your job is to make these people happy. And it's like, if you keep that in your mind, you're going to have a whole new perspective. But I think it's just like, so kind of just narcissistic if you remove the audience from the equation.
Yeah, I always thought it would be kind of funny if they set up drama clubs, just like a comedy club, but now you come up here and you make me cry. Same objective. You're trying to pull an involuntary response from me, because that's what comedy is. I don't get a choice. I'm going to laugh. It's an involuntary response. It's coming out of me. Same thing, make a cry club. And if you want to do that weird fucking monologue shit, go do a Sophie's Choice monologue at the Cry Club and see if you can kill with tears. I would love to see that actually happen. I'd go to the Cry Club. I've never been to a comedy club as an audience member in my life. I've seen shows other than Jody's show, really. But like, I started stand up when I was 19 and I wasn't even old enough to get into clubs. So I only was allowed to go on stage and get the fuck out of the club. And so
this was in Texas?
No, I was born in Texas, but I grew up in Arizona and California. And so this was, I moved out to back out to California when I was 19, and then started at the Comedy Store when I was 20, and always just worked there as an employee for 3 years, learning. You just learn, watch every single comedian. I even got to know George Carlin back then. He did a whole residency there. And so you just learn and watch and observe. And I would learn and see so many of the good, the bad, and the ugly. Even the bad comics could tell you what to do and what not to do. Like, just by, I would see the mistakes they would make. I could see the ones that weren't honest. I could see the ones that were scared, and it was such a great, it was like I got to audit the greatest comedy club in the world for 3 years while doing comedy there.
Tell us more about your comedy history. Who were some of your first comedy heroes?
I started young. When I was a kid, my parents listened to Richard Pryor all the time, and then Eddie Murphy came out like when I was like 3 or 4. And my parents were pretty cool. They let me watch anything, so I was really into Eddie Murphy. And then I was into, like, I was an old soul and watched a lot of Nick at Night, so I like old timers like Bob Newhart. I liked Woody Allen a lot. I know you're not supposed to, but he was just goddamn brilliant. I liked Robin Harrison. And then George Carlin. And then as I got into stand-up, actually right before I got into stand-up, I really got into Chris Rock when he started to get big. And then I got to know him. And he was always my idol in that he was like a mentor who I was like, this is how you approach comedy. It's a real job, no fucking around. You go up there and you do it, you get your reps in. And I performed 5,000 times by the time I was 25, just because of his ethic. His is like, it takes a long time to get good, put the hours in. And so I always worshiped him in that way. He was agenda driven, like comes up with a notebook, never bumps anybody, says yes, please, and thank you. And so I was always like, that's how, if the number one comic in the world acts like that, who the hell is the number 150th comic in the world to big time anyone, And so he was somebody that I always kept. And I know Dave Chappelle and got to know him very early when I was 20. And I love him and think he's the greatest. But the work ethic, the career path, and the way he carries himself, always Chris Rock for me. And it's a New York work ethic. It's New York comics. It's just Comedy Store comics. We're a lot like New York comics, and that this is serious fucking business. We don't do anything else,
And in LA, I mean, I live in New York, and there's these comics that do like a dozen shows in a night. Is that possible in LA to get that kind of stage time?
At the Comedy Store, yeah, because we had 3 rooms. So just in one club, I would do 3 shows, or sometimes back-to-back shows in one room. And so that's why Comedy Store comics were different, because we got to do way more. And then on top of that, the Laugh Factory, the Improv, my record, and you have to consider distance here, is the most recent. I did 5 clubs, the Ice House, West Side Comedy Theater, the Laugh Factory, the Comedy Store, and the Improv, all in one night. You're not going to get 12 here, but you are going to get lengthier stage time here. And here you don't have to bark. Where in New York, you got to bark out in front of the clubs before you get started. And I was lucky to never have to do that. I worked the cover booth and I came in May 25th, 2000. Mitzi Shore, the owner, she would just fire people just for nothing back then. Apparently I had walked in like to the OK Corral right after the shootout, because literally just a bunch of fired motherfuckers. I'm like, you guys hiring? They're like, yeah, matter of fact, we are. I'm like, I'm only 20. They're like, that's cool. Come on in. And it's been my comedy home ever since. But and I even realized too, she would fire people because she could see they weren't funny. Like I wish she'd always go, they're not funny. And when I was like, how do you even know? You haven't even, she could tell. And by funny, meaning you're not yourself. You're just not, I can't teach you to be that thing that you're never going to be. I can teach you to have stage presence. I can teach you to pace. I can teach you all that. But if you're not funny, and you see it, you see comics show up who try to supplement it, and some can get famous not being funny. Sometimes you'll see a comic go, that guy's not funny. Sometimes the bigger the comic, like globally, the less appeal they have to a lot of people. And by that, I mean, like Jeff Dunham's probably the top earner in comedy.
Right.
Would you go see him at gunpoint? You know what I mean? Like, no, he's got puppets, I'm acting like my friend Sebastian now. Puppets. This guy, you got puppets. But it's kind of like music. The Backstreet Boys probably outsold the Beatles, but nobody's going to tell you they're even 1/100th what the Beatles were. It's just when something reaches a very wide global, especially with comedy, the comedy can tend to be a little more watered down to reach a global audience there.
You have to lower the bar, like lower common denominator to broaden out, an appeal like that. Not always the case, but a lot of the time.
The tent. Yeah. Broaden the tent. And I don't blame them. Go get that money. Like and then there's the rare ones like, Jim Jeffries, I know he's a world comic and he's brilliant. Bill Burr, same thing. There's world comics who actually are brilliant because they got the world to understand their point of view, And then there's other ones who are just like catchphrase. Oh, catchphrase, Yeah. But there's a place for that.
And then 2 last questions. And I always love this on any comedy podcast. What was your all-time worst gig?
Oh, man. My very first set as a paid regular at the Comedy Store in 2003. It was a Tuesday night, and usually the Tuesday nights were dead. And Mitzi had a rule that if there's 6 people or more, we're going to start the show. And so far, there was no people in the audience. And it was 9 p.m. 10 p.m. came around, and they called her to see if she wanted to call it. And so my buddy Rick Ingram, who just went on tour with Chris Rock, he goes, hey man, I got some White Widow, you want to go smoke in the back? I was like, it looks like the show's gonna get canceled. Yeah, let's go smoke some White Widow. And I had never smoked White Widow.
What is White Widow?
Well, it's a strain of weed that and especially in California, it's always been super potent, and this is very potent, you are extremely stoned weed. So I take the hit with him, I'm coughing, and now my head's floating away like a balloon. And the door guy comes out. He's like, hey man, we just got 6 people showed up. You're on. And I'm the first one on. This is like your welcome to professional comedy. and it's like 6 old white dudes, and I'm back there like my heart's like racing. Now I'm super stoned, and they turn the lights off, and I've never gone on with the lights off because before you're a paid regular, you perform with the lights on, but they make you turn the lights off to really put you in a deer in headlights thing. And so I get up there and I got cotton mouth. I'm like that Chris Farley character. Like I can't even form a word. And so I'm getting into my little routine. I don't even know what I was doing at the time. And they're not feeling me, man. There's just 6 old white guys. They're ordering their drinks and talking to themselves. And I can just feel it growing in my head. I'm like, oh no, I'm getting scared. And I just can't connect with them. And then one guy goes, don't quit your day job. That's like, unfortunately, this was my day job.
Yeah.
I just got moved to night shift, and that made him laugh. But then I still got into like, I was able to eke out of there, do a couple of impressions, and get them to not be cruel. Basically, I sweat through that thing so bad, and it felt like 75 minutes, even though it was only 15. You get the light at 12 minutes, but because I was stoned, but something happened, and halfway through it, the stone wore off because the adrenaline
Right.
got rid of it. And I started to get off, and I even asked them, I go, where are you guys from? And they're like, Scottsdale. Rick, my lady's like, dude, you're from Arizona. You couldn't have connected on Scottsdale. I'm from a town over in Arizona, and I couldn't even connect it on that because I'd been so rep. But I didn't help. I got through it. I did my first set. I kept the check from it. It was $15 for my first paper set, but it was hard. And other than that, I've got to say, in my career, I've not been heckled a lot of times. It's sort of an energy thing. Some people just have heckle me energy. I just don't, I guess. People ask me for directions, ask me for the time. I'm that guy. Even if I walked into a bank, was like, everybody give me your money. They're like, come on, get the fuck out of here.
That guy, come on.
Yeah, no, come on, guy. and I've always been happy with that, though, because I don't want that trouble. I don't want trouble on stage, but I have destroyed hecklers before, because after a while, I got to the point where it's like, you're going to try to rob me from this? You made a big fucking mistake. Because what comics don't realize is I could just go, your mom, your mom, your mom, and I'd win. But I'm not. I'm going to eviscerate you, but in a humane way too. I'm going to try to include you on the laugh. But if you get belligerent, oh yeah, I destroyed a guy so hard one time he wanted to shake my hand afterwards. A black dude tried to come at me. Man, you ain't shit. I went black on him. I was like, you ain't shit, motherfucker. I shine the light on him. He was dying. But it's never have I had a thing where it made me go, I don't want to do this. As a matter of fact, when you do it, you go, I don't want to say it's not arrogant. It's not, I don't want to say it's not that hard. The funny part is easy. The hard part is talking to strangers. But I've always been good. I think because I was a military kid, moved around a lot. And as you can tell, I can talk a lot. I've always been fine and comfortable talking to strangers. And so even my first time doing comedy, I was like, that was it? That wasn't that hard. I actually did really well my first time, which a lot of comics do, because you're naive. You have nothing to compare it to. And so you're your most honest self. But then you start carrying around a notebook, wearing a blazer. You're like, I'm a comic. And then you bomb 1,000 times because you think you got it figured out. And so, but that's that growing stage you go through until you go back to that person you were on open mic, just being like, hey, man, this is me. Got nothing to lose. And that's how stand-up is.
Yeah, just so happy to be there.
Yeah.
I remember that from the early days. I'm just so happy to be on stage talking to this microphone.
Yeah, I waited in line. This is fucking great. Hey, I know that guy. Like it's a supportive environment. Even with the comics is we like to watch each other bomb, but we like to watch each other kill too. And so but I think that the whole getting up thing and whether you bomb or kill, that's never even an occurrence to me. Like when we were young, we wanted to kill all the time, but it's like when you get older, you're like, okay, killing's fine, but can you develop something new? Can you, go to a new place, be willing to take licks for new material? That's what I see a lot of comics afraid to do.
Like I used to do Edinburgh a lot, and you have an hour show, and it's just like always like those moments where you could turn it to something serious and then bring it back. And then it's just like, and feel their attention there equally as hard as if they're all laughing.
Right. And that's when you get into the long form comedy and headlining. And I think that's when you uncover that, I don't have to go in there. We're not Navy SEALs. I don't have to go in there, murk the place and bounce out and go meet girls afterwards. Like you can go in there and go, wow, he gave me an hour of perspective that I might not even agree with it, but I was into it. It was a show. You're putting on a show. And so I think that's what made me really like comedy was, and now it's funny because, I'm going to work with you guys on hopefully a special. And I only go do stand up now when it's purposeful. Like I did the Comedy Store the other night, but I used to do it 3 times a night. I would never even dream of not doing it. But, I'm 44 years old now. I don't worry about the skill leaving me. I will have to go bang and get serious when I go, get ready for a special. But I almost look at it too, like, it's that 23-year-old me's turn right now to have a spot in the main room right now at 10:30 p.m. The cherry spot. I'm not going to go take that from him because I don't need the money. And what's more is I can get right back there with a phone call. Not a phone call. I'd have, you know what I mean? But like, I don't believe in taking up those things every day because I put those 10,000 hours in. And if
exactly. I was going to say that you put it in your Beatles 10,000 hours in Amber,
right.
And then it's like, how to tap into that energy right off the bat. And
I'm not going to forget how to play the guitar, mate. You know, like it's that's I might be a little rusty starting off. I'm headlining a gig in La Jolla next week, doing a whole new set, a whole new hour, and it's going to be not going to bomb. I'll get a lot of laughs, but it's not going to be cohesive. It's not. But that's what it's going to take to get to where it's going to be something really great, I think.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just like the excitement comes every time it's just creating new material, and where almost I feel like if I go back to old material, I'm just cheating.
I always look at
it's just like I know that's already I know that works.
I'm like
what other avenues can I explore? How can I push something? And I work with all tech, just even my solo shows, and it's just like I want to build something where I can take time to build it at home. And then I'm presenting it out to the world.
That's
and then
exactly
you have those two minds of, kind of my introverted mind of just building something by myself, and then your show and tell when you bring it on stage.
That's how I always approach comedy. Is I will do it and I'll be very omnipresent in the clubs, and then suddenly you don't see me for 6 months. And I always treated this like a musician does, especially like a 70s rock musician. Like, this is an album. This means something to me. And I have to go out and have experiences in the world. I can't just be just hanging out with comics every night, bro, smoking weed, getting up at noon. I want to go meet teachers. I want to go meet normal people who I want to have my finger on the pulse. And it was David Bowie. Every album, he would ride his bike through a different country, Germany, France. He'd live there, immerse himself in it, and go, okay, let's see what comes out. Yeah. And no, I'm not that status, but that's how I still approach this art form is that, no, you're not going to see me every night. You're not going to see me posting all my set. Here's my set from last night. Here's my set from tonight. I haven't even gone on yet. Like, okay. This is an Herbalife, man. This is art,
Yeah.
We love Picasso because he churned out a painting a minute. That was great, but he was also a legend. But if you oversaturate, to me, you're taking away from yourself at that point,
You stupid. Everybody so stupid.
Just lastly, any other takeaways from your moment with Michael Richards to, your whole history of comedy, or, just being there that night, and once again, the last person to bring Michael Richards on stage as a comedian ever?
I'll forever be connected to Seinfeld, and that makes me feel pretty good. Yeah, man. It was just one of those things that happened that you forget sometimes because you live in this little bubble in Hollywood. That TMZ stands for 30 Mile Zone, and it's a very small block, Doheny to Sunset, Highland to Wilshire. And things happen in this block that affect the globe, And that was kind of a reminder, even by then I'd been in Hollywood for 6 years, that, these things that happen in this little neighborhood that I live in, they make the news. And, things you say, things you do, the infamy thing I had never seen up close. Now, I'd seen it a few times with a few comics I know were canceled, done. And it's scary. And I don't want to say scary, like, I know I've never done the things they've done, but it's scary to see, how somebody could build something so big that he did. And in one terrible set at the Laugh Factory, just destroy it. And I think the only reason Seinfeld went to save his butt because it was about to go to DVD.
The DVD was about to be released. It's like I could just hear that conversation. We gotta save the DVD sales.
You went and dropped the N-bomb on the. So I think that's probably. It's almost like having ordered, like taking Lee Harvey Oswald's order before he went to the book suppository. Like, give me a sandwich. Make that to go though. I'm going. Like it was like, oh, I had
or selling him the movie tickets when he went into the movie theater.
There you go, Mr. Oswald.
There you go. Enjoy the show.
Sure.
Enjoy the picture show.
Yeah. Is that blood? It's fun to see those little connectivities in history. And I got, a million more stories like that. I've been at ground zero of some crazy happenings that maybe I'll write a book someday. If I never get as big as I think I should get, maybe I'll just write a book and do a tell-all. But a lot of names, who've and not dirt, not bad things. Just, on seen things happen, heard things said that just like it's almost like a cop probably doesn't regret being a cop. Like, oh, I've seen some crazy shit. That's kind of like comedy. Like they say, don't go into it, and I don't recommend you do. But you're going to see some crazy shit coming up, Well,
Freddie, thanks so much. Love the stories. Love chatting with you. And thanks so much for being on the Comedy History 101.
Well, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it, Armin.
All right. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. And with that, we wrap up our episode on the history of Michael Richards' Meltdown. And once again, remember to take time to like, subscribe, and comment on Comedy History 101, wherever you get your podcasts. Also remember, on Thursday, August 17th, 7 p.m. at Young Ethel's, I'll be producing my show, That 80s Improv Challenge, as well as on Wednesday, August 30th, Comedy Bites, AI versus Human Roast Battle at Crystal Lake in Brooklyn. And until next time, bye-bye.
You stupid. Everybody so stupid.
I'm trying to use the phone! Excuse me!
Comedy History 101.